evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? Is Sunday, the 16th of March, 2025. We're nearly at the spring equinox, the beginning of spring, just a few days to go. More importantly than that, we're near St. Patrick's Day, which means time to plant our potatoes. Hope everyone is well and hope everyone is having a great weekend. Now, tonight we want to talk about companion planting. We want to know from you what you companion plants you use, whether you do companion planting, and things like that. What we need from you, really, we need you to go and grab a notepad and paper to make sure you take notes and get ready to ask any questions to any of the experts in the group who have done a lot of companion planting. Before we get into that, let's firstly see if anybody is there. And straight away, yeah, we have got Turbo Stream. They're saying good evening, veg podcasters. Good evening to you. Allotted Chef saying good evening all. Good evening to you. Rob's Allotment Garden. Hey, good evening, everybody. Good evening to you. Scott, aka Seed to Table Plot 13. Good evening all. Good evening to you. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Rob's Allotment Garden says, saying hello to a few people there. Allotted Chef Nathan is also saying hello. Digwell was there. And in Bristolian, he says, oh, all right, me old muckers. Al bist the Gert last day putting on with a jar a cheeky glider. Is called mind I'm shrammed of something. What he's basically saying is that it's been a good old. Let me start that again. What he's saying, let me translate it because I did an awful impression of a Bristolian accent there. Says, hello, everyone. How are you? He's had a great day potting on with a cheeky glass of cider. It's cold, mind. He's shrammed. Oh, he's rammed. Shrammed. I'm not sure what shrammed means. But he's sat in the greenhouse doing it as well. I think that's the translation anyway. Anna Jones is there. They're saying good evening, gardeners. Good evening to you. What else have we got? Oh, Digwell has put his translation. Hi guys, how are you all? I had a lovely day potting on, but I did have to sit in the greenhouse as it was so cold. A glass of cider helped. I wasn't far wrong. Stuart Jackson, evening Richard and Veg Army. How nice it is to be out in the garden all day. Indeed. Kentish Gardener has joined. Evening all. Good evening to you. And Turbo Stream says, plant potatoes, you say? I've only just gone and dug out some stored ones I forgot about, so they are chitting. It's that time of year when we want to get our potatoes in the ground. It's that, for me, it's that opportunity to, it's a sign that spring is here. Spring is coming when we get our potatoes in the ground anyway. Gary is there saying good evening, everyone. Good evening to you. Rebecca is there. Hi all. I can't believe it's 6 p.m. already. Time does fly at the moment, doesn't it? It does seem to be really going by too quickly, even with an extra day off a week. Jenny is there. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Hope you're all well. Hello to you. And Rob says I did some pots of spuds today. There we go. So let's get into it. Let's get into companion planting. Who out there, put your hands up if you do any companion planting. Now, I think a bit of an explanation about companion planting is probably in order. And the way I define companion planting is when you grow two plants together because they have a beneficial effect on each other. One of my favorites is tomatoes and basil. When you grow tomatoes and basil together, the flavor of the tomatoes and I believe of the basil increases. They taste better when they are together. And that's just one of the great advantages of companion planting. It's a great way of improving flavor in some cases. In other cases, it's good for avoiding pests and diseases. And in other, it's just that they benefit each other. Could be they shade the ground out. In the case of beans and squash, the squash around the base shades the roots so they stay cool and cold and don't lose their moisture. So benefits all round. Let's go back to the comments. Digwell says he awards me a honorary rosette for effort. Thank you very much. I do try. I do try. Turbo Stream says I won't be growing spuds in the ground, just a couple of potato bags. Fair enough. Excuse me. Everyone does it different. Whatever works for you. Digwell says leaving my spuds for a week or two, still way too cold for me. I've got to admit, the soil temperature where I am isn't too bad. That's why I got away with it. But air temperature, particularly overnight, has been pretty cold, hasn't it? It has been pretty cold overnight this week. So there's definitely something to keep an eye on. Rebecca put her hands up. One of my favourite ways of planting. Excellent. We may come back to you with some of your advices. Rob says, only thing I grow as companion planting is marigolds with my tomatoes. So why do you put marigolds and tomatoes together would be my question to that. I want to find out more. I really want to find out what everybody plants as companion plants and why. Allotted Chef Nathan says onions and carrots as a companion plants. Why? Stuart says, hands up, yes, it helps with pollution. I think that's meant to be pollination. I could be wrong. Again, what do you use? Turbo Stream says, last year I grew a few onions in between the collie plants. They seem to coexist okay. Over on Instagram, the little black and white cat joined, Team Ararat joined, and Siphon25 joined, but I don't think they're there now. The Kentish Gardener says, I tried to companion plant some veg, some flowers. I'm not doing the flowers this year, though. So that's a type of potager I think you're talking about there. Let's get into it. Let's carry on. Jenny, is that hands up? But not the normal way. My planting supports soil, providing shelter or support and attract pollinators and predators. That's why she companion plants. Digwell says that marigolds and tomatoes are a good combo. Why? What is it they do? Why is it they benefit each other from? Chili Cake says, hi everyone, sorry, very much here, but mucky hands cooking dinner. Not a problem. What are you cooking? That's probably a difficult one to ask if you've got mucky hands, but I'll throw it out there anyway. As long as we don't get a heavy, hard frost. Anna Jones says, carrots and chives smell, keep the carrot fly away. So this is exactly one of the things that I've written down, that carrots, when you harvest carrots, they can attract the carrot fly. But if we grow something from the onion family, be it onions, spring onions, chives, it tends to keep the carrot fly away. And I believe some of us actually do a lot of that. What question with that, though? Carrots and chives makes a lot of sense. Do the chives need to be in the ground, or can you pot them in a pot near the carrots? Turbo Stream says, we've had a very cold week, very frosty here most mornings. Rebecca says the three sisters work very well for me. That's a type of companion planting, three sisters, sweet corn, beans, and squash, where they all benefit each other. Turbo Stream says, I saw on a graphic that brassicas are complementary with alliums. This is what we want to find out. Why and what can we use? Digger says marigolds are a triple whammy. Attract parasitic wasps, smell deters pests, and root pheromones deter nematodes. So marigolds are, I've grown a lot of Tagets this year. Tagets are a type of marigold, I believe, but I am going to be sowing a lot more marigolds. Now the weather's warming up, we can do that. Stuart Jackson says, marigolds next to my runners, nasturtiums around the veg beds to help with pests. Nasturtiums for me are one of my favourite companion planting. I try and get nasturtiums in every single bed. Nasturtiums attract black fly, which keeps them off our broad beans and things like that. Nasturtiums are also edible. All parts are edible. Plus they flower, so they bring in pollinators as well. So we got a triple whammy, and I try and put nasturtiums in every single one of my beds. Gary says, like Nathan, leeks, onions and carrots, as I once had carrot root fly pot off by the allium smell. Yeah. Again, I've explained that as well. And Digwell says the carrot smell deters the onion fly. So double whammy there. Chili cake, roast chicken with the last few sprouts. What a lovely day on the allotment. I've still got a few sprouts I need to harvest. Actually, you just reminded me that. Gary, for really, Digwell, or are you teasing? I think that's about the yeah, the marigolds. Yeah, no, he genuinely, that is one of the, or three reasons there to grow marigolds. Jenny says potatoes under peas work brilliantly. Nitrogen in the soil for potatoes. Potatoes hide pea sowings from mice. Interesting. I've never tried that. Turbostream says, I haven't studied companion planting yet. Still trying to get my pea brain to work out rotation on the plot. Don't worry too much about rotation. Rotation isn't a necessity, but it helps. Jenny says, nettles in tubs next to beans. Blackfly love nettles. Ladybirds love nettles and blackfly. Some butterflies need nettles. Win-win. Digwell says, nasturtiums attract blackfly from bean, but if there are no blackfly, they can bring them to the beans. Yeah, there is a risk with everything, isn't there? Anna Jones says, I've grown the chives in a pot and in a row. The pot actually works surprisingly well. So that's what I wanted to find out, actually, because I have got a lot of chive seeds. I've got a lot of chives in various locations in my garden. And I believe I think it was Digwell, if I'm not mistaken, who said that he grew chives all around his beds as a companion plant anyway. So I'm looking for ideas like that we can use. Richard Golden's joined. Hello, sorry I'm late. Lovely to see you. Hope you are well. Rob says, I don't like nasturtiums, spread like crazy. I love them, but each to their own. Cillian says, not for taste or pest, but I grow sweet pea and climbing beans in a position as a windbreak for Brussels sprouts, etc. Interesting. Digwell says there are four main types of companion planting: prevent disease, repel pests, speed up growth, efficient use of space. I do all four. Let's have a quick check on Instagram. Nothing going on over there. I noticed one year that blackfly loves some of my duck plants that we were growing since Turbo Stream. And Rebecca says, I do use a lot of flowers around my veg to encourage pollinators. And Turbo Stream says, I do have a flower section to attract various pollinators though. So let's get into it. We have mentioned a couple of plants that I think are the key ones that I think we would use. Marigolds, nasturtiums, chives. I've also written down, what else have I written down? I've got tagetes. Tagetes are a type of marigold that I've sown back in January. We've got loads of them, actually. In fact, if you look at the image for this episode, you will see they are my tagetes on the go there. Borage is another great herb that we can use as a companion plant to bring in pollinators. Comfrey also. Comfrey is a fantastic plant anyway. It is invasive. It can spread, but it works great for bringing in pollinators and being able to make your own plant feed. Onions as well for the smell to diverge, and along with chives and other things like that. Spring onions, excuse me, spring onions work in a similar sort of sense too. Just quickly, Beto says, hi all, finished washing up after making tea. Stuart says, just a reminder, don't forget to like, follow and subscribe and all that jazz. Rob says, I plant when they are ready to go out, never rotate, just the next empty bed. And Jenny says, clover is amazing for pollinators and to make feed. Ballycinium, mint in pots amongst your vegetables is good as well. Basically, we're getting up with lots and lots of different companion planting. So my question now, if everybody just says one companion plant that they use and why, and if anybody isn't doing any companion planting, why don't you do it so far? Hopefully, we will inspire you tonight to do some companion planting. So all I want from you now, one companion plant that you use and why. And if you don't do companion planting, why aren't you doing it. Digwell says, without upsetting anyone, there are only a few things that need pollinators on a veg plot. Cucurbits and fruit to be some. But yes, we all need bees and wasps. Bees and wasps aren't the only pollinators, of course. A lot of insects are pollinators, but I've always felt that we do need pollinators, but if we've got flowering plants anyway, they're going to bring in the pollinators. It's generally early in the season, like at this time of year, when there's not many pollinators around, where I feel if we've got anything that is in flower, or unlikely, well, actually, my peach tree is in flower. We need to bring in pollinators at this time of year to pollinate my peach tree. So we do need flowers at this time of year. Turbo Stream says, I've been sowing flower seeds today. Echinacea and lupins. Will be sowing borage too this week. Interesting. Question, says Digwell. What do you think is probably the best companion plant? I'll give you a few minutes and tell you. I'm going to say, that's a good question, actually. I'm going to say it does depend on what do you consider to be the best companion plant. Reason I ask that is that if you don't have a problem with getting pollinators, or you don't have a problem with certain pests or diseases, then it's probably a very different reason as to why you want companion plants. I'm going to say chives or marigolds would be some of mine. What about you? Adding to Digwell's list, Anna, plants can be used to support each other and shade each other from the sun. Yeah. Jenny says, Richard, it's a shame I didn't think to say about the Instagram reel for my old garden. It shows how full it was and so productive. Absolutely. Stuart Jackson says, marigolds just to help with pests. And Ballycillion, this was in answer to my question. Marigolds keep whitefly out of the polytunnel. There we go. Chili Kate says tomatoes and basil because someone tells me it tastes better. Really, it's just easy to pick them both for a tasty salad or pasta sauce. Yeah, I'm told they taste better, and I can tell the difference actually when I do grow them together. But they also great when they're cooked together as well. Rob says my mate lives in the Falklands and there are no bees there, but other pollinators. Yeah. And Bello says, never knowingly done companion planting, but after listening, I've done a few without knowing. There you go. It's amazing what happens without thinking about it. And Rob says, I would say marigolds. I think that's in response to Digwell's question. So a lot of questions going on at the same time there. I guess the common one seems to be marigolds and tomatoes and basil. So is there anybody out there, actually, let's throw this out there, anybody out there that doesn't do any companion planting? Jenny says, I don't plant in groups, all mixed up. Verbinia confuses pigeons as they can't land on your brassicas. Beans shelter salad from the sun. Slugs will not like to cross furry leaves like lamb's ear. Jenny's getting very, very technical on it, and this is good. Is this part of permaculture, that subject I've struggled to get my head around? Digger says dill is beneficial to more species than any other plant. That's his answer. Dill is probably the most beneficial. So perhaps we need to use more dill. I haven't actually written dill down, but we do grow quite a bit of dill. Digger says also goes on, it attracts insects like ladybirds, hoverflies, parasitic wasps. Its smell deters pests. It attracts pollinators. It releases compounds into the soil that helps suppress soil-borne diseases and pests. Fantastic. Over on Instagram, bearded growers have joined, as has Kimmy's Kitchen Garden, and bearded growers say, evening, Richard. Good evening to you. We're talking about companion planting. We want to find out what companion planting does everybody do, or does anybody do? And the question I was asking, is there anybody out there that doesn't knowingly do companion planting? Rebecca says pollinators increased harvest and seed production and support biodiversity in a healthy ecosystem. Totally right. Totally right. And I think I was reading a statistic. I can't remember the exact facts, but I'm under the impression that 40 years ago there was something like 1 million beehives in the UK, and now we're down to something like 50,000. We need more beehives. Personally, I think if it's possible, every allotment should have a beehive if it is possible. Digwell says, closely following on from his deal as the most beneficial companion plant, closely followed by marigolds that do exactly the same, but deal tastes better and is taller. Rob says, never had dill. I quite like dill. I've got to admit, it's, as a herb, it's one of my favourites. I once grew it in a hanging basket, and it actually grew incredibly well. I was surprised actually because I had this hanging basket. It was in the back of our old house where we got no sun. So I hanged it on our shed. And I think because it was higher up, it managed to get a bit more sun and it grew well with that. And we got lots of dill out of it. Rob says we are not allowed to keep bees on our allotment site in case they swarm. We are actually allowed to keep bees on our allotment site, but we have to go through a lot of paperwork and stuff. But I think every allotment should have a beehive, a communal beehive, where people can get involved, or a local beekeeper could get involved with the allotment and try and manage it so they don't swarm. Often, I think bees swarm when they're poorly managed. But not only that, another thing that I think we've got to remember is that bees swarm in wild, in nature, naturally anyway. And I think often beekeepers get accused of the swarm when it may not necessarily be then. Bearded growers have joined. That's better. I can see the chat now. They've moved over from Instagram over onto YouTube. Jenny says, it's how it works for me. I don't touch any pests I don't have to. There are elements of polyculture, permaculture. I listen to nature and how she works. Then I try and copy. Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm interested in permaculture, but I've never managed to get my head around it. However, one thing that I like to use as a companion plant, particularly around my seedlings, are my carnivorous plants. I think I've mentioned this before because I know somebody out there got very upset with me because they went away and spent a fortune on carnivorous plants. But amongst all my seedlings, I have Venus flytraps, I have the sundews with the sticky pads, and I've also got some of the I forget what they're called, but the long mouthed ones, the long tubed ones, which they all work at reducing the amount of pests that I have. And so far, this time last year, I was having trouble with black fly or green fly, one of the two. I can't remember off the top of my head. This year, we've had no pests at all on my seedlings. So we're winning. We are winning. Or was it, what was the other one? I had trouble with the compost flies was the other one. We've had no troubles at all with that this year, thanks to using our carnivorous plants. Go get carnivorous plants, pot them in your greenhouse, pot them around your seedlings. It will work. Just make sure you use hot water, not hot water, sorry, rainwater. Jenny says, I would love to have bees. Absolutely. And Digwell says, what I was meaning about pollinators is that only 10% of veg needs to be pollinated. Most are perfect flowers. But as I also said, we all need them. Yeah, we all need pollinators, but you're right. Pollinators, I think, is the key thing. It's not necessarily about bees, although bees are important. We all need pollinators. Turbo Extreme says there is a beehive on his plot. Excellent. And Rob says, our council say it is for health and safety. I just think it could be done right. And if every allotment site had a beehive, it would go a long way in helping the problems. Beanie Grower says nasturtiums were planted today. Didn't do many companion plants last year and noticed a lot more pest damage. I'm going to have to get into that, aren't I? But yeah, that's interesting that you've noticed a lot more damage through having the lack of companion plants. This is what we want to find out more. Digwat says we have about 10 hives on our site. The beekeeper makes a unique honey from the hives and it is sold at the site garden centre. That's a reason to have, that's what I mean. We need local beekeepers keeping hives on an allotment site. Turbo Stream says, I would grow carrots, but I don't like to taste, and the badgers dig them up. Anyway, fair enough. Pitcher plants, that's the word I was looking for when I was talking about my carnivorous plants, pitcher plants. Beto says, with 7 varieties of tomatoes sown this year, I better get some marigolds in. Marigolds and basil. Well worth growing with your tomatoes, especially in a greenhouse. In fact, I'm gonna have to make a note to sow all these now. You've got me actually talking about this. I've got quite inspired to do more. In fact, I have been sowing companion plants, thinking about it, because it's all part of the AI seed list we came up with. Rob says we have about 40 badgers on our site. Fantastic. Badgers are fantastic, aren't they? Mini bears, I like to call them. Bally Soon says, same here, Rob. Badgers and foxes. Digwet says, carnivorous plants are no help for greenfly as they are static and don't move around. It's just another tool in the arsenal, though, isn't it, really? I think, anyway. The Kentish Gardener says, I'm really getting into carnivorous plants. I have them all with my seedlings to stop and flies in the house. Yeah, I'm with you. I am with you. Just don't feed them. Just use rainwater. Very important. Digwat says, I love our hives despite getting stung 6 times last year. Yeah. That is the downside of bees, but I can't remember the last time I got stung by a bee. Rob says, now the council are asking to put fences around our plots to help with the badgers. It's the only way to stop them. You've got to defend them somehow, and a barrier is the only way when it comes to badgers. Digwell says to Beddoes, do grow out marigolds with them. It's a game changer. Biddy grows last year, a muntjac deer found our allotment site. He enjoyed gooseberries and rhubarb. Is there a companion plant then that can scare away or keep away deer? I don't think there is. I wonder, does anybody know of a companion plant to keep away deer? Jenny says, I will be sowing seeds like nasturtiums every 2 weeks as they have a quick turnover. Good enough, good enough. And Rob says, and we have about 20 allotment cats. Keep the rats and mice population down, I guess, in there. Nicola has joined. She says, oh, let me bring it up. Sorry, I'm late. Hi all, hello to you. It looks like it's just starting to get dark, so I'm not surprised that everybody's struggling to get here tonight. Over on Instagram, Melanie Dolores, as I believe that's how it's pronounced, has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. Has anybody ever thought of, how can I phrase this? I can't think of the question I was going to ask now. My mind's, it's gone completely out my mind. I tell you what, I'll throw it over to you. Has anybody got any questions about companion planting that they want to throw out and ask? While I try and think of what I was thinking of. I'm sure. I tell you what, yeah, actually, I know what I was going to ask now. Planning. When are you sowing your companion plants? Not Nicholas, sorry. Jenny has already said she's sowing them every 2 weeks. I think that's a probably about right. But how often or when are you starting to sow some of your companion plants? Let us know. Let us know. Jenny says, I don't think deer like sea buckthorn. We can eat the berries. A lot of our native hedges have natural deer defences. So I think sea buckthorn is quite a thorny plant. If I remember correctly, it's more thorny than gooseberries. All I'm going to say is that the deer on that I think it was it who was it that said Where is it? Bearded growers. They said that deer came in and ate the gooseberries. So would that are they are the thorns on sea buckthorn worse than gooseberries? Digger says muntjac are an invasive pest released from Woburn Abbey Estate around 1925. I've only ever seen one, and that was this winter. I've seen every other type of deer, but I've only ever seen one muntjac. Tiny little things, really, aren't they? They spread far and wide now. We have only one muntjac. Yeah, I've only ever seen the one, but we know they exist. I haven't seen them where we live. Where I used to live, we used to get a lot of deer because we had several estates near us that had wild, they say wild deer. I'm never quite sure if that is quite true. But yeah, the deer are around where I used to live. We don't get any here, but it's only time, only time. There we go. Digwell says most of my natural companion plants self-seed. I do sow extra marigolds though. Oh, interesting. That is a good answer. Just let them self-seed so you can get marigolds and other things naturally. Bearded growers, our site is fenced in, but they didn't have an issue jumping it. I'm amazed. I mean, deers are pretty good at jumping anyway, but muntjac are quite small. I guess if a fox can jump 6 foot, a muntjac can as well. We have muntjac in Birmingham now, loads in Worcester. What else have we got? Rob says there are hundreds in the pine woods at Wells next to the sea. There we go. They're all over the place, just not in Sussex, obviously. I get deer, badgers, foxes on my land. And Beddoes, I'm going to put some peas and some tomatoes in the greenhouse on opposite sides, mainly so everything isn't ready at the same time. What's good to plant with them? Well, tomatoes, you know, marigolds and basil. What's good to plant with peas as a companion plant? Good. There we go. That's a good question. Kate says, good evening, Veg Army. Sorry I'm late. Quite a few people are late tonight. I think it's that lighter evening, isn't it? It's just throwing everything out of the out of sync. Gary says, what about anti-companion planting, enemy planting? What plants shouldn't we plant together? I remember fennel being one mentioned a few months ago. That is actually a good question, because there are some plants that have totally different conditions that they can't go together, and I can't think of any examples at the moment. But anybody got any enemy planting, anti-companion planting? That's a good one. Thank you. Turbo Stream says, my area of Birmingham was once a royal hunting forest, so they're green corridors so they can travel at night. And apparently I live in a posh area, so they won't come here. You don't know Littlehampton at all, do you? Really isn't posh at all. Really, it's probably anti-posh. It's the opposite. And that's probably why they stay away. Digwell says pea companions, beans, carrots, celery, corn, cucumber, eggplant, parsley, peppers, potatoes, radish, spinach, strawberries, and turnips, to name just a few. Whew. Actually, strawberries are one that I do try and grow a lot of. I used to grow them a lot underneath my fruit trees and bushes. It's almost like a, what do you call it? Where they understory plant strawberries to reduce weeds and things like that. I used to do that a lot. Haven't done it for a while because they gradually died out and I haven't replaced them. Nicholas says, I was early in 5 p.m, then nodded off. Been hauling pavers free from Facebook Marketplace for the chicken indoor runs. I have to admit, I could do with a nap sometimes. It's getting old for me. Jenny says, Gary, I broke the rules and planted fennel all through my bed. It all grew really well. Fennel bulbed up lovely. There was no space around the plants. Nothing was affected. Then Digwell says, I have a whole list of anti-companions. Tell me which plant. What shouldn't you plant with strawberries then? I'll throw that one out there to get started. Nicholas says ground cover. That's the word, ground cover. That is the word. That's what I used to use strawberries for, as ground cover. Beardy Grower says, I got myself some free stabs today for my plot seating area. Must be the day for hauling paving. I've been having an editing day today, been busy indoors, editing everything up so that I'm all organised for the week. Busy weeks are now getting on top of us. But hey. Oh, time for a swig of coffee. So yeah, I'm going to throw out there, what's an anti-companion to strawberry? What shouldn't you grow? I tell you what, this might be a fun experiment to do. What if I'm gonna list? So I'm gonna throw out a vegetable or fruit or a plant. I want an anti-companion and a companion. Before we get into that, should we actually go share a video before we get into that? Where's our first video? I'll do the quick one. The mission from last week was to build a cold frame. So I'll quickly put that up and we'll continue this question on. Okay, so this week's mission was to build a cold frame out of scrap. Now, when I was looking around for scrap, I found this, I think it was a wine box or something, but it's pretty destroyed, but it will do the job. It's already made a perfect frame, maybe a little bit on the small side. I think when we get some plants in there, it will be fine. And then all we gotta do, I've got this old glass fridge door, place that on top. There we go. Our cold frame is made. Put some plants in there, should be good to go. As easy as that. Back to the studio. So was that mission accomplished or mission failed? Is that a cold frame built out of scrap? I think it's past. What do you think? So yes, I'm throwing that question. Strawberries. What's a good companion plant for strawberries and a good anti-companion plant? And a bad anti-companion plant, I guess you would say. Nicholas says, I bought 20 bags of Strolcher's ground cover this year. Strolcher's good stuff. I used it once, but it is good stuff. Jenny says, I have some paving slabs that need laying if you fancy moving some more. Gary says, is there anything that shouldn't be planted with tomatoes? Shouldn't be planted with tomatoes? We'll throw that out there as well. Turbo Stream. Oh, I couldn't listen to the sports podcast as it says page not found. Sorry, off topic. No, Turbo Stream. I did actually mean to bring that up. Members of a supporters club. I put a podcast out on Thursday. I also was changing my server over. I've upgraded my server because we're having a few problems with speed issues. Very boring technical stuff. And for some reason, when I put it out, I uploaded and made the page and it was there. And when I've gone back to it, it seems like it's been lost in transition. So that's why you couldn't listen to it. It should be okay. I'm putting the one out tonight and I'll add Thursday's one with that as well. But apologies for that. Beardy Grows, yes, spent the morning editing our show, then 4 hours on the plot, home to a roast. Pretty perfect day. Love it, love it, love it. Digra says strawberries, cabbage, kale, cauliflower, tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, peppers, aubergine, and melons. Are they the anti-companions? What do you think? Is that the anti-companions? What about good companions? Nicholas says, pass on that mission. Mission accomplished, albeit too easy. We like it. We keep it simple. We keep it easy here. Beardy Grows, love that, Rich. That will do the job. It's all about keeping it simple. Jenny says, I like that, Richard. Easy to place where you want / need it. Absolutely. Keep it simple is what I try and live by. Keep it simple, stupid is the acronym I use. KISS for short. Turbo Stream says, I have a bag of Strolch at the ready in the plot shed. It's good stuff. It is good stuff. It's expensive, but good stuff. Strawberry companion, borage, marigolds, garlic, onions, thyme, and asparagus. So let's throw it out there. Tomatoes, good companions, bad companions for tomatoes. That might be a good way of doing it. Idaho Garden Girl, hello, Richard, and all like, thumbs up. Yeah, please do give us a like, a follow, subscribe, and all that jazz. Over on Instagram, Dan Store has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. Nicholas says sunflowers should not be planted with other stuff stunts growth. What plants shouldn't they be planted with then? Let us know. Anti-companion for tomatoes, brassicas, potatoes, and kohlrabi. I'm surprised about potatoes because they're from the same family, but I guess they probably shade each other out or too competitive for each other. But you can get the the tomato and potato. What do you call it? I can't think. Where you get potato at the base and tomatoes at the top. I'm guessing it's the shading out that potatoes cause. Bearded Grow's potatoes seem to hate everything. Yeah, they do. They do. But I think it's because of the way potatoes grow. What else have we got? Digwell says tomatoes, good companions, basil, beans, borage, carrots, celery, chives, collards, cucumber, garlic, lettuce, marigold, mint, nasturtium, onion, parsley, and peppers. Okay, let's throw this. Let's change it. A good companion for cabbage plants and a bad companion for cabbage plants. Let's throw it out. By the way, anybody else wants to chirp in, feel free with this. Nicholas is grafted, Richard. Yeah, they're grafted. Tomatoes grafted onto potatoes, but there's a name that they were called. Like the egg and chip plants was aubergine and potatoes. Tomatoes or something. Well, no, tomatoes. Jenny says, again, I broke the rules. I had sunflowers and used them to support tomatoes, peas, apple, etc. Seem I am a consistent rule breaker, you rebel, Jenny. Jenny's a rebel, but there's always one in every group. Nicola Wyville had tomatoes on potatoes. Yeah, tomatoes, I think they were called. Or what was the potatoes? Oh, I can't remember. I like the idea of strawberry and asparagus bed. Good use of space. So asparagus does tend to hate competition. Really hates weeds. Hates competition. It also needs a lot of moisture. It is a coastal plant, which is why I tend to use the seaweed as a mulch for my asparagus. Digwell says 2 from the same family are never good as they compete each other for nutrients. That answers that a lot. Tomato likes marigold as it stops white flies. Indeed, it does. Indeed, it does. And bearded growers, spudmatos. It was something like that. I think they've had a few names, but I can't think what they were called. Chili Cake says, to be controversial, when we set up the plot, we grew potatoes and tomatoes together because that's what the rotation guide suggested. Been very happy with the output, so carried on. If it works for you, it works. I sometimes wonder if there's too much attention paid to the rules that you know me, I like to challenge rules. I like to experiment and find things out for myself. And I can't think of something that I've done that everybody else says is wrong, but it works great for me. But potatoes and tomatoes together, if it works for you, great. But I think the problem comes from the fact that they compete for nutrients. Hyssop is meant to deter cabbage whites. I've not heard of that, so that's going to be a useful one to do. Certainly be good to get no cabbage whites this year, wouldn't it? Turbo Stream says, I seem to be anti-companion to onions. My risos have iffy germination again. I've had really good germination on my onions. How old is the seed you're using? How old is the seed you're using? Digwell says, brassicas, good stuff. Chamomile, dill, mint, rosemary, sage, nasturtium, and marjoram. Kate says, is garlic okay with carrots? I think it would work quite well with each other, actually, because onions and carrots are companion to each other. Onions deter carrot fly and carrots deter onion fly. Garlic is fairly closely related to onions, so I think it will work. Turbo Streaming, I can't grow I can grow cauliflower, no problem. Good old cauliflowers. Tomatoes, that's it. Tomatoes. That's it. That's the potato and tomato combination I was thinking of. Nicholas says, we recommended not to do pots and tomatoes close together because of blight. You're going to get blight no matter what. It's one of those things. Gary says, Google says the tomato, a portmanteau of potato and tomato, also known as tomtato. Lots of different names, but you get the idea. The Kentish garden. I put marigolds in my greenhouse with my tomatoes last year and still had loads of whitefly. Did I do something wrong? Last year, I think, was an exceptionally bad year for things like whitefly and whitefly, blackfly. Compost flies were the worst I've ever known it, actually. Digwa says, but would the output be better if they were apart? A test is needed. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is what we need to do. Test things. I hate rules as well, especially speed limits. Oh, Benno's, your humour doesn't fail us. It was the Veg Grower podcast seed, so not that I'll know they would be. The mine germinated fine, so there's something going on. Is it your compost, I wonder? Jenny says, I think I'm the only one who likes cabbage whites and I don't use net. I'm with you. I don't like to use nets, but I'm going to try hyssop and try and deter them using hyssop. If that works, great. All alliums help brassicas, and I will be sowing a row of onions in my cold frame in April. It seems the only way I can grow them. Interesting. I've got to admit, slightly off topic at the moment, my windowsills are full up of plants, but I've moved some chilies and aubergines to my grow house last week, and they survived this cold snap, so they're now going on into the greenhouse. We're going to be planting up our greenhouse soon, which will be great to get that growing as well. I don't know if anybody else slightly off topic, has anybody planted up their greenhouse yet? Has they got a greenhouse operational yet? Right, I tell you what, let's go to a. Oh, this is quite a long video because it went very, very wrong. The cook along for this week, so we'll plot that up now. You want me to? It's gone very wrong, and even the ending of it went wrong. Yeah, potato cakes is what you wanted me to make. So have a look and get ready to call me lots of names. Okay, so for today's recipe of the week, we're going to be making potato cakes. Now, potato cakes is fairly simple. What I've got here is some mashed potato. I've made this a little bit runny, admittedly, but we're going to start off 300 grams of mashed potato, and into that we're going to add 80 grams of flour. We're just going to mix this mashed potato and flour together. There we go. Actually, that's coming together quite nicely. I've never made this before, so this is a bit of a experiment for me as anything. I'm glad that has came together quite stiffly. Now we're just going to add, I've gone out into the garden and got some chives. I'm going to add to that as well. And we're going to add a bit of salt and a bit of pepper as well, and give this all a good mix. That's mixed up well, so let's get this into the pan. So here in this pan, hot oil. Hopefully this is going to work well. I think you're meant to roll this out, but I'm going to try something a little bit different, and we're just going to pop that into there. Try. Oh, already it's gone wrong. It's stuck to the frame, to the spatula. Bear with me. We're going to try that out. Okay, so attempt number 2, we're going to take a splodge of the potato mix, and that's also sticking. Trying to get this as flat as possible. Okay, I'm just putting number 2 to the side now. I'm going to try and make number 3. I've tried rolling some out, that didn't work. So we'll try this sort of similar method of sort of sticking. There we go, that's sort of getting there, a bit better. Okay, well, there was more of that I thought I'd filmed, but I forgot to hit the record button after that. But we ended up with a plate full of those potato cakes. Actually turned out quite well. The trouble was they were a bit too runny. And I think that came from the mashed potato I made in the beginning. I think that was just too runny for it to work. So I've learned something from that. However, taste-wise, those potato cakes were delicious. Absolutely delicious. I gave them a 9.5 out of 10. I would definitely be making some more of them. In fact, I had a bit of an idea. You can make a potato cake, then pot in some like shepherd's pie filling, roll over the potato cake, and you've got what are they called? A wrap, a shepherd's pie wrap. How's that for an idea? Really good. Really enjoyed that. Whoever suggested potato cakes, thank you, because I'm going to be making lots of those in the future. They were delicious. Don't forget, we need a suggestion for a recipe for next week. If you've got any ideas for that, as well as a mission. I forgot to ask for a mission for next week. Right, let's go back to the comments. Digwa says the official name was Tomtato, a bit of a gimmick. My own trial was okay, but the same as half of each if I'd grown a potato with a tomato on their own. I felt they were a bit of a gimmick. Maybe good if you had a small space to tomatoes, like a balcony or something, and you wanted potatoes and you wanted tomatoes, didn't have space for both. It might be good for that. I believe my grandfather used to do them during the war as well as a bit of a way to make the most, but they don't really work. I wouldn't entertain them again. Bit of fun, but that's about it. Turbo Stream says the leeks are growing fine though, so perhaps it's a variety of Lisa Craig. I was looking at my leeks. We're getting germination, but very, very slow at the moment. Polytunnel is still in its boxes, Jenny. You know my thoughts on polytunnels. Get a decent one. Make sure it's weighed down. Gary says, I moved my greenhouse today to a sunnier spot. It's had a good scrub and now ready for sowings and potting up. Excellent, excellent. Digwa says it's a bit runny. Indeed, it is. Brian's Garden and Polytunnel has joined. He says he's just woken up. Welcome along, wakey. Good morning to you. Hope you are well. Jenny said, Richard, I loved that. It was really nice. Just went very, very wrong in more ways. I was doing that on Friday night when Amanda was out for the night, so I thought I'd make advantage and cook everything up, and it went pear-shaped. I tried rolling it on the rolling pin, and the rolling pin just got covered in mashed potato as well, even though it was powdered up and what have you. Stuart Jackson says, does anyone else plant sweet peas and runners either side of the wigwam? Thanks, team. That's a good question. Wigwams. Anybody got any thoughts? When you grow your bean wigwams, do you grow anything on the inside or the outside to help that out? What else have we got? Gary says, not sweet peas. Normally several varieties of beans on the same frame to save space, but I would imagine adding sweet peas would be attractive. Yeah, I can see that working. I haven't grown sweet peas for a while, actually. Digwa says, I love potato cakes. I freeze them. That's when I reheat them, they're full of resistant carbs, which are good for diabetics. Same as frozen bread, frozen rice, frozen chips, etc. Interesting. I'll remember that. How about tempura vegetables? Yeah, we could do a tempura vegetable. In fact, I seem to recall Chef Scott giving us a tempura vegetable recipe. Tempura something or another, wasn't it? Ginny says, I grow several varieties of beans all round and then grow lettuce under the plants. They will enjoy the shade and less bolting in the summer. That's a good tip or good advice there, isn't it? Stuart Jackson says, a mission for next week. Sow your seeds only in recycled items. This was our gardening lesson last week. That sounds like a good mission as well. What do you think of that? My leeks have good germination. Some of my veg grower podcast onions, but not sure if I used the latest seeds or a previous batch. Probably be the latest seeds. Onions, like carrots, really don't like being a year old when it comes to seeds. Certainly my experience anyway. You still get germination, but not great. Don't use the wigwam system, says Rob. Yes, and I freeze my own chill or my own rice spuds, etc. Purple sprouting tempura. Do you want that to be the recipe for next week, as well as Stuart Jackson's mission of sowing seeds in recycled items? I think we can do that. And if we get some nice weather, I might even try cooking outside, because I'm slowly rebuilding our outdoor kitchen. Now, coming back to companion planting, has anybody got any more questions to ask? I'm going to throw out there, what's a good companion for pumpkin? Any good companion or bad companion for pumpkin? I've got quite a few pumpkin plants this year, and I need to actually crack on and sow a load more. Good thing is, I think now the weather is warming up, we don't necessarily need the heated propagators to sow loads of seeds. Don't know what you think on that. I think we're going to get away with sowing seeds outdoors. Need more cold frames. Need more greenhouses. What have we got? Rob is saying to Digwell, we used to buy potato cakes and potato bread from Sainsbury's. They was nice. Never heard of potato bread, but I'm going to have to give it a go one day. Easy to make, buddy. I was surprised just how easy potato cakes were to make, and potato scones, as I think they're called north of the border. I was surprised. Just literally mash, flour, and a bit of seasoning, chives or onions or anything like that, and then just fry them into a nice sort of pancake shape. They were incredibly easy. They say you should not freeze rice, but we always do. I don't think they say you shouldn't freeze rice. You're not meant to eat rice from the day before, but everybody does. Because rice is particularly bad at holding on to a certain bacteria, as I understand it. If you freeze it, it's fine, because freezing it slows down the growth of bacteria. But it's if you leave it for, I think it's like overnight or something. I'm sure somebody who knows more about food safety will be able to comment on that. Rob says June did not like them, so will not make them, and I don't want to cook. A myth not to chill or freeze rice, recommended by my doctor. I thought it was a myth, but I do believe there's something if you leave it out overnight. Brian says, I could only imagine pumpkin going with sweet corn, the leaves from the pumpkin to preserve moisture for the corn. Yeah, I can see that working, pumpkin and sweet corn going well together. And Jenny says, Three Sisters works well. The Three Sisters works well, but best with decent-sized corn plants, then pumpkin, then beans. Give them corn a chance to grow tall enough. I did this, but also added in a stepsister of sunflowers. So the Three Sisters is a good version. Sweet corn, which grows long and straight. You then grow beans around that to grow up, and then pumpkins shade it up. But it is all about timing. You want to start your sweet corn off early, so they're decent size when they go in the ground. Put your beans at the base of that when you plant your sweet corn, so that then they start to grow up, and in a week or two after, plant your pumpkins. Otherwise, what will happen is the pumpkin will shade out your young sweet corn, your young beans, and they won't be able to grow because they've got no light. So timing is everything. Chili cake, a new chili cake would know exactly what I'm talking about. Rice, Bacillus cereus, it's a particularly nasty bacteria found in rice, and it grows perfectly at room temperature. But of course, we don't want that when we freeze it. It's not room temperature. Rob says if we have a takeaway and don't eat it all, we freeze it the next day. Yeah, absolutely. We do the same. Digwell says good. Corn, beans, nasturtiums, marigolds, lavender, marjoram, and oregano. I can never pronounce that right. Bad onions, potatoes, courgettes, cucumbers, and other squashes. Interesting. Other squashes. Interesting. Jenny says you can make your pumpkin work for you and grow a summer shelter to sit on. You can make your pumpkin work for you and grow a summer shelter to sit underneath. Fruits off the ground so they won't rot. Only thing. So what Jenny's talking about there is having like a pergola type thing, like your grapevines growing up around you and having your pumpkins like that, which is actually quite a good way. The only trouble is if you are growing big pumpkins, the several kilo pumpkins, you don't want to grow them up something like that unless you've got a very, very strong shelter. And even then, you want to be careful because they might break off and break and things like that, unless you can support the pumpkin well. But if you've grow the little pumpkins, which are some of my favourites, you should get away with it a little bit better. So keep those comments coming in. Anybody got anything they want to add about this very topic on companion planting? I'm trying to think of another one. So Digwell seems to be coming up with the good and bad companions, but don't forget, I want to hear from everybody. Anybody else has got any good or bad companion planting with whatever I suggest, let me know. So what's another one we could do? What's another one we could do? Tell you what, potatoes. We've had a lot of discussion about potatoes. What's a good companion plant for potatoes and what's a bad companion plant for potatoes? Might be a bit of a difficult one, that, but I think it could work. Jenny says, Richard, I found my fig leaf gourd seeds. Shall we? I don't think I will ever grow it again. The actual size of a plant wasn't too bad in the end. It did get big, but I just did not like the flavour, the taste of the gourd. The shark's fin melon, wasn't it? I just didn't find it to be anything I would use again. So I won't be, but you go ahead. You go ahead. I think they would be good at reducing weeds in a certain area, though. Scott says you just need to keep rice out of the danger temperature zone. So chill quickly if using the next day and keep chilled and fine to eat cold or hot if reheated properly. Yes. Yep. Yep. It's all that I think it comes from a lot of people who would have, let's say, a takeaway curry that at night and they leave the rice on the sideboard and then they eat it the following day. That's when issues come into play. But if it's done right, it can be fine. Digwell says, with companion planting, any plant of the same family that needs the same nutrients is an anti-companion. We do not need veg to compete with each other. So here's my question. Here's my question to that, and it makes perfect sense. But we often have, say, an onion bed or a garlic bed. I tend to grow my onions and garlic in the same bed, but I am adding nutrients specifically for those particular plants. Is that why I get away with it? Because it's not relying on nutrients in the soil. I'm adding the nutrients, even though they're all in the same bed and effectively companions with each other. Potatoes, good. Basil, carrots, cucumbers, courgette, endive, oregano, oh, whatever. Parsley, rosemary, squash, and Swiss chard. There we go. I didn't think about carrots and potatoes, but that does make sense. It does make a lot of sense. Then Jenny says, my best advice for companion planting, give it a go. If you want to try / like the look, etc., give it a go. And the best time trying. Rule book, I never read it. Neither do plants read rule book. So I do think there's a bit of an experiment, a bit of playing around that we could do. Just waiting for the bad companion plants for potatoes. I know tomatoes are going to be there, but I'm sure there's many, many more. And then I'm going to come up with my next plant that I want a good companion plant and a bad companion plant for. In fact, I'll tell you that now because I'm sure people are writing the bad companion for potatoes. But my next one I'm going to throw out there, rhubarb. Rhubarb. What is a good companion plant for rhubarb and what is a bad companion plant? Oh, Digwell says, ignore his last comment. I messed up with a copy and paste. Ignore that. Ignore that. Interesting. Interesting. Why do we ignore that? Why should we ignore that now he's said it? Unless that is the bad. Unless that is the bad. Or we wait and see what happens. Well, let's see what he comes back with. But rhubarb is the next one. I want a good companion plant for rhubarb and a bad companion plant for rhubarb. Digger says potatoes good. Bush beans, celery, corn, garlic, marigolds, onions, and peas. And Jenny says, hand on heart, I've never came across a bad companion plant. Fair enough. Fair enough. I think sometimes the worst thing that we can do is monoculture, which I'm pretty bad at doing myself. I actually think when we mix things up, they're more than likely to do well. Think about nature. You don't have the same rows of plants, grass, I guess, but you don't have the same rows of plants in nature. Mix things up. Ginny K says, how about doing it without using Google? I'm not using Google. I'm not using Google. This is one of the things I can't do while talking. So Digger says potatoes bad, brassicas, carrots, cucumber, kohlrabi, melons, parsnips, rutabaga, otherwise known as swede, squash, sunflower, and turnips. Totally different. So rhubarb is next. Rhubarb is next, and then we will go. I tell you what. While you think about rhubarb, let's have a look. Oh, that should be that one. Have a look at what photos you've been posting this week. Now, first of all, Simon, aka the Kentish Gardener, has shared this photo of his vegetable patch I think this is at his house. But what you can see is the cold frame. A fantastic cold frame. We were talking about those last week. Looks like the beds are made out of railway sleepers as well, which is, I think, quite a popular thing to use these days. Looks great. Looks great. Very neat and tidy as well. Next, Steve has been using straw bales in his new garden beds. This is actually something I really like the idea of. He actually did thank Nigel Muddy Boots for this suggestion. It's something I'm going to be doing straw bale gardening again this year in a particular area of my garden. I've just got to get hold of some straw bales once I've been paid. But I also need some stuff to... we might talk about straw bale gardening next week, actually. I think we will. But yeah, I like this idea as a way to fill up these beds cheaply. Now, Beddoes, a serious post from Beddoes for once. He has been sowing some peas. Meteor from the Veg Grow Podcast Supporters Club. an actual serious post from him. That's absolutely amazing. Kate has hydroponics are producing some brilliant roots. In fact, that reminds me, well, I'll have a look at mine in a minute. But yeah, they look great, don't they? These hydroponics do have some really fantastic growth, fantastic results coming from them. Certainly mine, anyway. The chilies are reading our book of the month, which I want to thank Gary. He sent this book to me. It is called Allotted Time, and I've been reading this book, and I'm really enjoying it. It's really eye-opening. 2 blokes, 12 months, 2 blokes, 1 shed, no idea. If you haven't read that book, highly recommend you go and get it. You can hear my review at the end of the month on the podcast of that book. Thank you to Gary for sending that to me. Nathan's seed shelf is looking absolutely fantastic, as you can see here. Spider Farmer grow lights, lots of trays of seedlings and things like that are growing fantastic. Really, really good to see. Please do keep sharing your photos. You can post them in our Facebook group, send to me via social media, or email me, richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. That's richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. So please do keep sharing your photos. Now, I did mention my what do you call this, tomato in my hydroponics. As you can see, we've got some really strong growth on this tomatoes. I'm not going to lift it up to look at the roots because we've got plenty of roots I can see in there, but it is doing really, really well. I'm a bit worried that nothing else has germinated that I've sown in that, though, but we'll keep an eye on it. In fact, how does hydroponics and companion planting fare together as well? Just a question. There was also a question about the sweet potato update, and nothing is really happening. Nothing at all. I think there's some signs of some roots developing at the bottom, but they've been like that for the last couple of weeks. So it's not really doing much. Not really doing much at all. So don't know what's happening with that. I've got to change water in that today as well, just to remind myself. What have we got? What have we got? Rhubarb doesn't really have any good, bad companions as it is a perennial. That's one way of looking at it. I would say that there are some bad companion plants for rhubarb. Now, rhubarb, often books will tell you that rhubarb grows best in full sun, but actually rhubarb, it comes from a woodland area. It actually does do quite well in the shade. Because it's a broad-leafed plant. It's a broad-leaf plant. So I was about to say that perhaps something's shading it out, but rhubarb would probably cause more problem to plants around it, such as strawberries that might be underplanted from that. Gary says, sweet potato update, please, for sharing that. Digra says, great pics indeed. Please do keep posting and sharing your photos. We love to see them. We need to see more. I was talking to my IT guy, and he's looking at a way that we can do it on Instagram as well. So somebody does something on Instagram and we'll see it on our show. Is the way we're looking at doing that. Gary says, mine just started getting roots. Well, they like mine because they're tiny. And Chilifield says, our sweet potato looks exactly the same like yours, just changed the water on it. Indeed. I wonder what is going on there. I wonder what is going on. Or perhaps it's just me being impatient. Jenny says, Richard, I would pop it in a sunny window. I know it's next to the lights, but you can't beat the sunshine. Well, we do get plenty of light through the window here as well. So I would try moving it over and see if that makes any difference. For those with ponds, rhubarb is loved by frogs and toads as a thick leaf keeps the sun off and they are large enough for shelter. It's also why slugs and snails love rhubarb and often hide under rhubarb leaves for that same reason. Yeah. Yeah, I love rhubarb. I grow a lot of rhubarb, grow a lot from seed as well, but it can be a bit of a, what do you call it? Bit of a pest loving plant. Um, Chili Phil says ours is on a sunny windowsill and no different to Richard's. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. This is. I find that I've done this in the past and it just doesn't seem to work. But we'll see what happens in this year. Digwa says, don't get the fuss about growing your own sweet potatoes. Cheap enough to buy without all the hassle. My plants were £1.29 each. The fuss is because I love growing everything that I eat. That's what the fuss is for me about. I want to grow everything that we eat. Brian says, I've tried sweet potatoes in the past I found the red varieties throw out shoots easier. Okay, perhaps we need red varieties then. Ginny says frogs have a slug snack under the rhubarb leaf. That's a good point. That is a good point, actually. Rhubarb attracts the slugs and snails, and the frogs and the toads would love the slugs and snails too. There we go. Here we go. Helen is there. I'm not going to try and pronounce your surname. I hope you are well. Lovely to see you. I've not seen you for a while. My rhubarb grows very happily with comfrey in my perennial patch. Not a deliberate companion planting on my part. That's interesting. Rhubarb and comfrey. Perhaps that's something we should try to experiment with and see if it works. Interesting. Jenny says they can take a while to get going. I can't think. Has it been 3 weeks now? We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Rob says I've tried 3 times to grow sweet potatoes with no luck. I've grown them from slips. I've brought the slips in to grow sweet potatoes, and we've had a lot of luck from that. But trying to grow slips from a sweet potato is what we really want to achieve. Chili Phil, the fuss for us is on the sweet potato is we like to experiment and see if we can make something work. Also enjoying growing along with you, Richard, of course. Of course, this is fun, actually. I think we should do more of this in the future where we try and, as a mission, grow things together that are a bit different. Well, I will grow the sweet potatoes. I will grow the sweet potatoes to eat. Yeah, fair. Yeah. Everyone's different. Everyone's different. Gary says, I did read somewhere shop sold sweet potatoes have some type of treatment to prevent shortage. I'll try and find it out. That's why I went for organic sweet potatoes to try and make sure it's not got any. They spray it in like an I can't think what it's called, but it stops them from sprouting, anti-sprout thing. Rhubarb and comfrey, both woodland edge plants. They both like the same conditions. That makes sense, doesn't it? That does make sense. Sprouting, not shortage. Sorry, auto-correct. No worries. I got what you meant. I got what you meant. Ballystinian says, never been able to grow sweet potatoes successfully. I think I might be too far north. So what I found with sweet potatoes, they do like sun. They do need full sun. But what I also like is really moist soil. Really moisture retentive soil. So I think if you can get those 2 things right, I think regardless where you are, a good summer will help. But one of the key things I think it's also is to not let the foliage drape on the ground. Try and grow it up like a climbing frame or something like that, because I think that produces better sweet potatoes than letting the foliage run it across the ground. From my experience anyway, try and grow it up and try and reduce the amount of shoots that you have. Rob says most of the sweet potatoes you buy in the shops come from the USA, so they spray them to stop sprouting during shipping. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different things that people do. But if you give them a good scrub, I think that's meant to stop them from sprouting. We'll see. We'll see. If these don't sprout, it just goes to show that even organic growers are doing something to their sweet potatoes to stop them from sprouting. Right. Before we get into a rant, it's time for Richard's rant of the week. Well, it's time for a Richard rants. This is our part of the week where I start ranting about things that are annoying me. And this week I'm having a rant about measurements. Now, generally, this is to do with cooking. I know we are a gardening show, but we do a bit of cooking. And I'm ranting about measurements because there's one particular measurement that really, really annoys me. Now, you might be wondering what this measurement is, and I will get into that in just a moment, but I'm sure we're all used to the fact that there's so many different measurements. Celsius or Fahrenheit, gas mark, inches, centimetres, millilitres, litres, gallons. Those are all the different types of measurements that you use, and often for scale, a banana. But the measurement that really, really, really annoys me is a pinch of salt, or whatever it may be, where you're just using something that is just so ridiculous, so tiny that they call it a pinch of salt. How much is a pinch of salt? This is a bit of a joke inside some of Avengers, where Ultron's trying to do a pinch of paprika, and he sort of looks, what's a pinch? Everything else will tell you 100 mils of this, 100 grams of that, 50 grams of this, and so on, and then you get a pinch of salt. Why not just say a gram of salt, or I don't know, a teaspoon of salt? Actually have a measurement, because what is a pinch of salt? Let me know your thoughts on that back in the studio. Indeed, a pinch of salt, it annoys me. It annoys me when everything else is so beautifully listed and then you get a pinch of salt. One of those things that just annoys me when it comes to recipes. So that's my rant of the week. Do you agree or do you disagree? Of course, it's open for discussion. One of the things I want to say with these rants of the week, if anybody has seen something maybe in the news that you think I should have a good rant about, please do feel free to send it in to me. My email address, of course, richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. It'd be good to find something in the news I can rant about, wouldn't it? I'm just thinking out loud here. So anything like that you think I should see, feel free to get in touch. So let's go back to where the comments were. Digwell says to Gary, many store-bought veg has growth inhibitor applied, but all it does is slow things down. They will grow. Indeed, I'm not too worried about that sweet potato. If it has been covered in something, I'm sure it will grow. Jenny says, if the foliage runs along the ground, it will root all along, talking about the sweet potato foliage, and grow tubers from there. Great if you have a long summer. Growing up puts all the energy into the parent plant producing tubers. Yeah, exactly right there. Ballicillian says, apart from being north, our allotments on the side of a hill overlooking Belfast, so never really get a long hot summer. That can be a bit of a problem then. Jenny says, it would annoy me, but I don't use salt. Well, it's not just salt, is it? A pinch of paprika, a pinch of pepper, something like that. And all I'm saying, how much is a pinch? It'd be better to say season to taste or whatever you think like that. In fact, Helen goes, a cup of butter is the one that baffles me. Even if you could cram butter into a cup, it would be a pain to get out again. Absolutely. Yeah, a cup of butter. I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought, because butter comes in a square, and yeah, it's a pain. It's a pain. That's a very good one. Gary says, I like it when I have specific instructions to follow, but I feel like if the author can't be specific, then it can't matter too much. I would prefer it if the author would say something like a bit of paprika to taste or a bit of salt to taste, rather than just saying a pinch of salt, because this came up because my wife did a pinch of salt and it was literally a few grains, whereas I did a bit more than that. I mean, again, people's hand sizes are different. It's like a handful of nuts, people say to grab. Well, my hands are quite large. A handful of nuts, I mean, that's a good cup's worth of nuts. Amanda's hands are quite small, so she wouldn't be able to fit the same amount of nuts in as well. My rent was on local news this week, 600 plus on a waiting list for an allotment, and there's plots on our site I've never seen worked. Oh, in fact, that could be a rent. That could be a rent right there. Send us that news article, Bally City. That'd be good to read. Because that could be a rent there. Because actually, I've got a similar thing on my allotment, although they are kicking people off. I've noticed all my neighbours seem to be kicked off at the moment. Looking at it. Stuart Jackson says measurements. Well, when I was at school, it was feet and inches. Now I teach in centimetres, metres, and I had 6 pence pocket money. The children don't even know what that is. Yeah, I mean, imperial metric is one of those things that has changed over time. I can work with that. I can work with imperial and metric, but it's because there's a definitive measurement to that. It's just a definitive measurement to that, but a pinch of salt is a little tricky. Digwat says a pinch of salt is a measure designed to appease the user. Salty is one of the 6 taste senses, so a pinch is meant to be as it suits you. Thank you. That is an explanation we were looking for. Why is this not common knowledge? I mean, as I said, in one of the Avenger films, Ultron is cooking something and he says a pinch of paprika and he's even looking baffled at the camera. So if Ultron, no, it wasn't Ultron, sorry. Vision. So I'm getting a bit geeky now, aren't I? Balician says, when I say worked, I mean council gives them a letter, they come up and stream the site and disappear again. Yeah. That's kind of why I think several of my neighbours have been kicked off their allotment because they haven't worked it for over a year, barely seen them last year. They have been repossessed, I think is the word that the sign says. They've repossessed their allotments. It's a shame because neighbours to the north of me have complained about those a lot with lack of taking care of their allotment, but the ones across the road from me have also been evicted, and they were a family who worked very, very hard on their allotment, and then last year they just seemed to disappear. Anyway, we are coming to the end of this week's episode. I hope you have enjoyed it. It's been good chatting to you. I'm just looking at things to see what's going on there. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something about companion planting. If you're going to be doing companion planting this year, don't forget to give us a thumbs up on your way out. And don't forget to follow and subscribe. We will be back again next Sunday at 6, where we're going to talk about straw bale gardening, because that's a topic I think we could get into. We've figured everything else out, which is really great to get that figured out a bit earlier. So basically, I think we are done. Right, guys, you take care. I'll speak to you again next Sunday at 6 p.m. Take care.